Open the public meeting at 12 o'clock, and we recessed it right away for a closed executive session. I'll now reconvene the public meeting. And the first item on the agenda is roll call. Let the record show that all three commissioners are present. Our next item is a public comment period. And for the respect of all those who are speaking today, please limit your comments to 3 minutes. We have 9 people who have registered. And so that's 27 minutes if they're at 3 minutes, and we allow 15, but we'll certainly let you all speak. We want to hear from all of you. So the first person on the docket is Richard Ray. If you could please use the mic there.
I can do that.
We broadcast it. We do these on YouTube now, or broadcast them, and you need to be heard on the mic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I am the dock manager for Drayton Harbor, and I've worked there for 5 years now. And I appreciate you looking at us renting the dock. I realize we have not had a working relationship with you guys because we have worked with the Dodds and Blaine Marina. But in the 5 years I've been there, we have supported over 100 fishermen. Last year we had 100 fishermen, both native and cowboys, as they call themselves, come sell to us. And in those 5 years that I've been there, we have had a good working relationship with Boundary Bay Fish next door. We have, when we've needed a forklift, they've loaned us theirs to get by, and when they've had a pump go out for air or water, we've loaned them. So we've had a great working relationship with Boundary Bay in the last 5 years that I've been there, and we've been there for the fishermen. We've always been there when they need to sell their crab or their fish. We've been there, and so I'd like to continue that operation. Thank you.
You're representing who, I'm sorry?
Drayton Harbor Fisheries.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Richard.
I don't have a great.
And the next speaker, can't pronounce the first name, but looks like last name Ray as well. Please introduce yourself.
It's Yvette Ray.
Yvette?
Yes, with Drayton Harbor.
Thank you.
Hi. Yes, he is my husband, the dock manager, and I am also in relation to Bingham Fox and Barbara Fox. And Drayton Harbor has been there for over 20 years, and as has stated, serviced over 100 boats. We've had 3 generations working there. They have supported young men and at times young women also with integrity, work ethics, and learning how to budget and save for things such as church missions, service missions, car, and education. We've been excellent attendants. It was brought up that you do not have a working relationship with Drayton Harbor. We have had it with Dodds, but that also means that it's because you haven't had to. We haven't been a problem child where you have had to intervene because we've been excellent attendants. We're looking forward to having a relationship with the port. We understand that door is closing and that we need to move forward. Drayton Harbor is more than just a business, and it's not just a family business. They support the community. They support our youth. They have sponsored 2 Eagle Scouts, one that is soon to be, and they have supported the music program, the sports programs with Plain and Blaine. My kids, I'm sure, have played in your sports throughout the community and in Bellingham. They have supported the curriculum of endangered species of the swallows and helping them, the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, build birdhouses to put up for the swallows. For the Audubon Society is why they did it. One of the Eagle projects they supported was for Mollywood. They built an aviary in hook-billed birds that people don't want, that they were either letting go or locked in closets. I'm sorry if I pronounce this incorrectly. Is it McCauley? Okay. You talk in your bio about the environment. Fishing is a renewable resource. And if you check the record with Fish and Game, we have an excellent record. We do not buy from those who would sell females or undersized crab. We're very conscious about that, because that is the only way the industry will continue, is if we're respectful of that. We want to continue supporting the community with sports and scouts and fishing. And if I go over 3, let me know. My glasses don't see that far. They have given scholarships to, and I am personally related to this because I ran Cub Scout Day Camp for 9 years. And there were children who could not go without scholarships, and they stepped up to the plate. So they raise them. They raise them up for generations to come. And we would like to continue to be able to do that. So we appreciate that opportunity. We appreciate the opportunity to get a working relationship so you understand the integrity that we work with. I personally have had fishermen tell me that they don't want to fish elsewhere because they know with Drayton Harbor that handshake is as good as a contract, and they will be treated with integrity, honesty, and respect. That means a lot. And that also is continued on to my children and others that they have taken in. My husband, he lost his, okay.
Sorry, go ahead and finish.
Very quickly, his father died when his youngest brother was 16, and his mom needed help. And Bingham said, come on over. And he lived with them and was able to work past that hard time and earn school clothes. And he has done that for more than one child. So I appreciate that time, and I appreciate the opportunity to be heard, and I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yvette. Our next public comment is from Keith Carlberg. Ken Carlberg, I'm sorry, Ken.
That's fine. My name's Ken Carlberg. I'm legal counsel for Bing Fox on his various business ventures, and I'm here to speak today as his representative because public speaking isn't his favorite thing to do. Bing is sitting right over here, but he asked me if I would come and stand in for his stead, so that's what I'm doing. We're here in support of the proposed lease between Bing Fox's business and the port for the North Pier in Blaine and associated premises that are part of that lease. As you may know, Mr. Fox has operated for 20 years with a unwritten sublease with the Dodds, been selling and buying seafood from the South Pier. As you heard just last year, even there was as many as 100 fishermen delivering to him. When Dodd closed its fuel operations, Mr. Fox was left, he may have an oral, may or may not have an oral lease, but he certainly didn't have a direct written lease with the port. So we're here to remedy that now that Dodd is out of business. When we started to deal with Mr. Brady Scott, they originally proposed maybe sharing the South Pier, which is where he had been operating, and that was because I think Boundary Fish needed some potential additional space. It may be that some of their dock space has to be shut down for a period of time while there's some remediation and renovation going on. And so ultimately it was determined that wouldn't have been a workable solution, and so Mr. Scott and Mr. Fox have worked out usage of the North Pier on a month-to-month basis. It isn't an ideal accommodation for a number of reasons. Mr. Fox had put almost $8,000 into electrical upgrades just in the last couple of years on the South Pier, so he's walking away from those. But with some upgrades on the North Pier and maybe some paving on the pier so that the forklifts don't beat the dock silly, the North Pier will work. Even on a month-to-month basis. So he appreciates the dilemma that the port's facing with some of the cleanup that has to be done up there. I think all the businesses up there are going to have to make some accommodations as we make room for all of that. And the question is how to do that fairly so that everybody that has been doing business can continue to do business. Ultimately, the end result of Mr. Scott and Mr. Fox's negotiations is they came to an agreement. A lease was offered, it's signed, the rent's been paid, deposit's been paid, insurance has been, proof of insurance has been provided. The only thing that's necessary is approval of the Port Commission. I understand, just 30 seconds here, that Boundary Fish and South Pacific Seafoods and others may or may not or may show some interest in the North Pier because that may actually benefit their businesses if they had access to the North Pier, and I'm sure it would be a valuable asset to them. But unlike Mr. Fox, who this is his only option, if he doesn't get this lease, his 20-year business is out of business. The others who may speak for or against it are those who have existing facilities and it's within their own business model to use those facilities. This would be an add-on for them, whereas with Mr. Fox, it's his only option. And we think it would be set a bad precedent if the port were to push out the small guy in favor of slightly bigger people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ken. Our next public comment is from Bingham Fox.
Good evening. 21 years ago, almost in August, I stopped by and seen Bud Dodd, and we made an agreement with a handshake. And I went to buying crab there, and I had no idea that it would evolve into what it has. But I checked with the bookkeeper, and we have an even 70 natives that crab for us, and I've got 31, like they said, cowboys. And it's been good for all of us. And I'd like very much to see it continue on. And my son-in-law and daughter, they're part of the business, and it's just a family endeavor. I'd like to keep it that way. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mr. Fox? Just had a question.
If you could go back to the mic, please. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
You also buy salmon, correct?
I plan to.
Have you in the past, or is this the first year on pinks, or?
Yeah, I've bought salmon in the past, Jim.
Okay.
On various years, I don't do it every year because I have to usually do it by tender, and I made an agreement with Bud when he was there that I would not buy salmon off the dock, and so I never did. But that changes the outlook considerably, and I plan on being very aggressive where salmon's concerned.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Bingham. Our next speaker is Archie Jorgensen.
Yeah, I'm here in support of Bingham. I guess you say I'm a cowboy. I've been selling to Bingham for 20 years. I've sold sockeye to him. I've sold crab. If I'm in Oak Harbor, I'll truck the crabs all the way to Blaine. I crab out of Bellingham. I truck them up there. Julie, the other crabbers asked Julie, well, why does Archie go all the way up here? I said, well, there's a reason. Buyers come and go. Bingham's always been there, and their check's always good, and they treat you fair. And I just want to give my support for them as a fisherman. That we need people like that. So.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Marlon, is it Dennis?
Yeah, my name's Marlon Dennis there, and I've been fishing for Bing for the last 18 years. He's helped my family out over the last 18 years, and I feel that the more competition, the better off it is for everybody. And if there's one less guy, that means the next buyer might just keep the price down. And they have done that in the past where Bing's always the first one to raise the price and the last one to drop it. And he just, like I say, he's just helped us out quite a bit over the last 18 years. I know there's other native fishermen, and I don't know why they haven't shown up to help out here. And that's about all I got to say right now. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marlon. Next speaker is Paul Burrell.
My name is Paul Burrell. I'm a Bellingham resident, 25-year commercial fisherman, a member of the Port of Bellingham Marine Advisory Committee, but I speak to today as part of the as a Bellingham leaseholder and co-owner of Sound Pacific Seafoods, located in Blaine. It came to our attention last week that Mr. Bingham Fox, doing business as Drayton Harbor Fishery, was being approved for a month-to-month lease of a pier in Uplands located on the western side of the Blaine Industrial Spit. I know there's been extensive planning by port staff for this proposal to become an action item. I would also like the commissioners to know there was multiple companies requesting use of this pier. While I will not stand in the way of the approval process and do not disapprove of Mr. Fox's lease of uplands areas, I would encourage the port staff and commissioners to find a way to make the North Pier a non-exclusive use pier. Speaking as a longtime fisherman, I can also say Blaine is in serious need of space, much like this pier, for use as a commercial unloading facility due to the current state of the Sawtooth Dock. While I know it is not in front of the commission today, another longstanding port tenant has requested exclusive use of the South Pier. I would like to comment on that. Sound Pacific Seafoods does support this future action. Boundary Fish has been a long-standing port tenant and a backbone of the fishing fleet. For some time now, the product flow has been hindered by activities on the South Pier. That, combined with the potential start of the port's conceptual plans, makes it a must-have for their company's well-being. While we value the relationship with the port, we also need the port to respect their tenants' needs. We would appreciate being informed of decisions being made as such as this that will affect our company prior to them being agreed upon and sent to approval to the commission. I think you can understand why our company feels slighted when a short-term month-to-month lease is given to the only company applying that does not have a current port lease and a long-standing history of non-compliance of port requirements. Again, I would like to thank port staff and commissioners for making yourselves available during this process this week. It was very, very helpful and informative. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Paul. Our next speaker is Arnold Yuki.
Thank you. My name is Arnold Yuki. I'm here representing Boundary Fish. We are located on the southern part of the marina there, and our main interest here is the southern dock, not the north. The main reason is because that dock is located right at the entrance of our lease property. So if there's any other companies operating that dock, it really hinders our operation. You can kind of imagine any parking lot to a store. If there's another company operating at its one and only entrance, it's going to interfere quite a bit. Another reason is also because I think there are plans in the near future for the port to replace the bulkheads. If that should go on, we won't have a dock to operate, and a dock is like over half our business. So if we were given permission to lease the southern dock for our use, that would be a remedy for the bulkhead replacements. Those are really the main reasons we have an interest in the south dock. Thanks.
I have a quick question before you sit down. You're in the, your building's closest to the southern dock, not the northern one.
Correct.
Don't you have to go past the northern one to get to the southern one?
We do, but there's another alternate route to get
okay.
to us. But
Okay.
if the southern dock is blocked,
To
then
go between the buildings?
correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Arnold, you do process dogfish,
That's correct.
and you process halibut,
Correct.
and crab,
Yes.
and salmon.
Yes.
Okay.
And we don't just handle, offload, and ship out. We process and provide about 30 to 40 jobs throughout the year for Blaine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our last speaker that signed up is Mark Silva. No? We'll scratch you off then. Is there, who was that dirty dog that signed you up, huh? Is there anyone who got here late and didn't get a chance to sign up that chooses to speak at this time? Yes, sir. Go to the podium and state your name, please. Pass that down to her.
My name is Brian Haling. I've dealt with Bing Fox for 15, 20 years. You call them up, whatever time of the night. As with Arch, we come back from Oak Harbor to sell our crab. There's always Julie or Richard there to buy our crab. He is a key operation in our commercial fishing business. To lose him would be detrimental to our fishery. For Archie, myself, Mark, Rick, I'd really like to see him stay in business. He's very important to us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Did you get the name, Diane, for the record?
Brian Healy.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that did not get a chance to sign up that wants to speak at this time? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to our next item, and our next item is our consent agenda.
A motion to approve consent agenda items A through F.
Okay, gentlemen, do you have any questions on the consent agenda? You can have the item, you can see the items in front of us.
I've only got one. So we gave authorization to the executive director to go out for, go out for grant funding requests without asking us. Is this something out of the ordinary? That'd be consent agenda item F. Do you need to ask us for this, or do we give you authority to go out and ask for these grants?
You gave me permission to go out and seek grants, but not to actually execute them. This is the actual receiving of the grant. So we've been awarded it by the state, and
Okay.
Well, Mr. Stahl's there to answer the question.
Oh.
Okay, so I was correct.
Perfect. Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions? From you, Mike? From you, Jim? Any other questions?
No, that's
on the consent agenda? One comment on the paving job. I was glad to see that we had two local companies on that, and they were only on $102,000 and $107,000, only $5,000 apart, and it's nice to see local companies get that bid. And the same on the Faber Brothers getting the renovation project. That was nice as well, another local company. And on that one, the bids were quite a ways apart, just to take note. $346,000 was high to $243 low, so a $100,000 difference. That's quite large. And I didn't have any other questions except on, let's see. I did have one on the pump out equipment we're buying. We're buying three new pump out stations. Dan, if you could answer this, I think. How long did the last three we purchased last? What's the life of these things?
Dan Stahl, Maritime Director. They tend to last around 10 years or so. We've been getting more use out of them, and so they have tended to last a little, not quite as long, but the state has been very, has funded these grants in the past, and they continue to do so. And it's important that we get not only capital dollars, but we're also able to recoup most of our operating costs. So it really is a boon both to the harbor and to the boaters.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You got to admire the legislature for putting money into this program, because the state's been pretty aggressive, I think, in the past few years on pump outs in Puget Sound. So it's nice that they've also added some dollars to help out.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Passes 3-0.
Thanks for turning me off. I said thanks for turning me off.
Our next item is an action item in real estate. Diane, if you could, whoop, your mic's not on.
A commission motion to approve a month-to-month lease between the Port of Bellingham and Bingham Fox, doing business as Drayton Harbor Fishery, for a property located at the Blaine Marine Industrial Area, Blaine, Washington.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Shirley McFerrin, Real Estate Director. And first, I want to thank all of our tenants and prospective tenants for their comments today. I am certain that our interests are closely aligned. It is our goal to keep all of these tenants in business and to provide as much access to the docks and floats as we possibly can. So I have in front of the commission a slide. You can see where Sound Pacific Seafoods operates. The yellow shaded area was operated by Blaine Marina, Inc. for nearly 40 years. They terminated their lease at the end of May, but actually vacated the property about close to the second week of June. So as part of that transaction, the port has accepted the North Pier and the South Pier back from Blaine Marina, Inc. We have asked Blaine Marina, Inc. to remove the other buildings, given that this is a model toxic site that needs environmental cleanup. But we've also said they can leave the buildings for about a year, and we could lease them on an interim basis. But the main point of discussion today here for the commission relates to the North Pier and the South Pier. And we have lots of interest in those piers. So staff has a recommendation for the commission today, and Diane read the motion related to Mr. Bingham Fox. So what that motion does is ask the commission to approve a lease for an exclusive month-to-month lease with Mr. Bingham Fox of Drayton Harbor Fish for the North Pier. Oops, I got to get my coloring crayon going here. For the North Pier. And that is a month-to-month lease with a right for the port to terminate with 10 days written notice. One of the things I want the commission to understand is we don't know the condition of the North Pier or the South Pier. We are getting a condition assessment survey of those two docks, and if we find that those docks are unsafe, we want the ability to terminate those leases. So that's the first motion we're asking the commission to approve. The second motion, and it would be a new motion that is not in front of you today, that I will give to Diane. But the second motion would be to lease the South Pier, to Boundary Fish on an exclusive month-to-month lease with the right to terminate with 10 days written notice if there are issues related to the condition of those piers. Mr. Arnold Yuki just spoke of the congestion in the area near the South Pier, and that has been a concern of Boundary Fish for about 10 years. So we would ask to lease that on a month-to-month basis exclusively to Boundary Fish. The next motion I would ask the commission, and we'll reread this motion, is the Sound Pacific Seafoods. Next to that property, there is a dock area that we will refer to as the Mid-Bay Dock. And it is located about the area that I circled in green near the Sound Pacific site. And I'd like approval from the commission to move forward with a lease for that dock to Sound Pacific Seafoods on an exclusive month-to-month basis with the ability to terminate with 10 days notice. And then we would come back to the commission in early fall, and staff would give a recommendation for a more permanent solution, but this will keep everybody up and running, give everybody a piece of the action during this season, and then we'll come back to the commission with a more permanent recommendation. So the deal points on the first motion with Mr. Bingham Fox, I want to point out to you that the original lease that we provided to the commission has been revised since the agenda was published, and we have added a release of claims clause in the lease that you now have in front of you for approval. The premises, again, consists of the dock and some outside loading and staging area and some small spaces inside of Building 2 and 4. Again, it would be a month-to-month lease for exclusive use, 10-day termination, and immediate termination if the condition assessment shows that that property is unsafe for the use. The monthly rent would be $1,831. There are special provisions in this lease. The property is leased as is, and there's special language recognizing that the port has not owned this property, nor has it managed it, and nor do we know the condition of those docks. The insurance provision was increased from $1 million to $2 million to provide the tenant extra coverage and to address the unknown condition of those docks, the port's unknown condition of those docks. There's also an indemnification that further recognizes that the conditions of the buildings and pier are unknown by the port. And then finally, there is a waiver of claims. And as I mentioned on the outset, we revised the lease to include a waiver of claims. And that is to say that Mr. Fox releases any legal claims against the port relating to his use of the property prior to the date of the lease that's now in front of you. So the first action is the one that Diane read. And then the next action I'll ask Brady to bring to Diane. And that is a staff recommendation.
Mm-hmm. We're going to do these separately, are we? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Shall I read the first one again? Thanks. A motion to approve a month-to-month lease between the Port of Bellingham and Bingham Fox doing business as Drayton Harbor Fishery for property located at Blaine Marine Industrial Area, Blaine, Washington.
We should probably read the second one since it's tied in with it. We won't make you read it the second time again, but when we vote, we'll vote on the first one first.
A motion authorizing the executive director or his designee to enter into month-to-month rental agreements with Boundary Fish for the South Pier and Sound Pacific Seafoods for the Mid-Bay Dock, both effective August 1, 2015.
Okay, discussing the first of those. Gentlemen, do you have any discussion or any comments?
I got a pile. You want to start?
Go ahead.
All right. So what's the timeline on the survey for the north and the south piers, when it's expected to be finished?
I would say in the next 30 to 60 days it should be finished.
Okay. In relation to that, if I'm Mr. Fox, why would I be willing to move off the South Pier when the condition of the North Pier is completely unknown, and therefore I might have business interruption in the middle of a challenging season?
Well, that is a risk on both piers, and we are also offering Mr. Fox a 2-month no-rent period to offset the relocation of those improvements that are on the South Pier.
Okay, so Mr. Fox is quite aware of this issue, right? I suppose, yeah.
I think that's appropriate, yes.
I got to ask my commission president, though.
Without the use of this facility, obviously, I can't take care of the crabbers I've got up at Blaine or the fishermen. And it would just literally, after 20 years, it would be putting us out of business. And these people come to the dock, they expect me to be there. And that we've attempted to do and will continue to. And I've got no place to go. Mm-hmm. I don't like giving up the South Dock, and Yuki knows this because we just put a complete new power service in it. And that's where everybody looks for us, and he's right. It's probably the best location in the port, bar none. So it's beneficial for everybody to get me off of there. It's called competitive. Guys, I guess that's it. I should have spent more time in here and less time out there taking care of fishermen. Thank you.
Well, just so you know, I'm not interested at all in making your business more challenging for you. I'm much more interested in making or finding solutions that are satisfactory to everybody, so you can all succeed. So please don't misconstrue my questions.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
With that being said, I've dealt with the Corps of Engineers quite a good bit in my lifetime and stuff, and I realize the challenges that you guys have up there with this EPA thing. And I looked at it, I've looked at Yuki's lease, and I believe that he's probably going to lose all of his docking when they come in there to do that work. A lot of people depend on him too. And so it's just a matter of everybody trying to get along and survive. And he's helped us and we've helped him. So we're flexible. We'll do whatever we have to try to stay in there. And there's a couple other spots up there where quite possibly on a temporary basis somebody could operate with a little bit of renovation on a couple docks and keep things going. But we've got quite a following, and it would destroy it. Is what it amounts to.
If we find out the south dock is in disrepair and we can't use it,
no,
if we found that out in a month, would you be willing?
They're both very usable.
Well, if we found out the south dock was in disrepair, would you be willing to share the north dock with Boundary Bay to give them an opportunity to stay in business?
Yes, but guys, think about it. On the 1st of October, if things go according to a normal opener, we have 100 fishermen in there, and they will have an average of 35 to 50 pots of fees. I actually go out and lease extra forklifts just in order to keep up with it. And Yuki's right. It's a traffic jam. And so for two guys to try to work off the same dock, the first week it would be very difficult on both of us. But that doesn't say that, and I'm sure Arnold will agree with this, that we can't get along. We always have.
Okay. I have more questions thank you, sir. I don't have any more questions for you, though, and my questions are now for Shirley, if I may.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So one of the questions that I've been kind of trying to find a good answer for is there any reason, given that there's an expectation of a big pink run this year and some other things that are happening, is there any reason to do all this now or to wait, or would it be better to wait on getting these things done? Because right now, Drayton Harbor Fisheries on the South Pier, the North Pier is available. There's a couple of spaces over at the Sawtooth. Sound Pacific wouldn't need to rent any more space to tie up boats. What's the reason for making sure we do these things now rather than at the end of the crunch season this year?
I think it gives everyone some predictability and gives everybody something in this until staff can come up with a more permanent recommendation in the fall. I think that our tenants are nervous about the future use of these docks, and it doesn't bind us. It gives us a 30-day month-to-month arrangement with the ability to terminate with 10 days notice and change things if we have to. But this provides predictability and some stability for our tenants right now, today.
Okay, and looking at this image, Building 1, I think there used to be appliances in there.
Yes, that's correct.
This is a question about the condition of the building. I think our long-term plans in regards to most of the property changes, I believe, the existence of those buildings. I don't know that in our long-term planning we've discussed keeping Building 1. Am I incorrect on that?
No, you are correct. In fact, we have advised the Dodds from Blaine Marina that as part of the cleanup, that those buildings will be removed and the cost of removal will be by Blaine Marina pursuant to the lease.
Okay, so most of my questions aren't totally related to this particular issue, but since we're having this discussion and otherwise it would be completely off the agenda, I'm going to bring them up now. So some long-term decisions have to be made about Blaine Industrial Area, some of them being where we're going to invest money now without doing work that's unnecessary now, because could be part of a future plan. I asked a question of, I think both you and Dan, about accelerating the reconstruction of the Sawtooth, which would leave us with maybe 4 or 5 locations there, either in a Sawtooth configuration or just a flat-sided wharf. So that could be a possibility for us to start planning on now, so that next year after, whatever, then we can have a lot of these problems solved, and then, Mr. Fox, Drayton Harbor can have another 20 years of absolute certainty on the North Pier, and the Yuki's obviously, or Boundary Fish would have that South Pier certainty. So would there be any reason to not look at tearing down Building 1 sooner than later to solve some of our congestion problems? Maybe now, because I don't think there's, as far as cleanup goes, the building's already just going to be in the way. The building's got to come down. It's not like we're adding extra work. I think it might be something we could at least have a conversation about, because that would certainly ease a lot of the congestion problems and create much more laydown space for both those companies, and maybe more.
Absolutely, we could.
Are you talking about tearing down Building 1 right during the heart of the fishing season right now?
Well, what's it used for?
Nothing right now, but I can tell you we'll take a hard look at that and come back and make a recommendation to the commission. This whole site is of significant interest to the port and the commission. We talked about it at our retreat. Mm-hmm. We need to come up with some recommendations as to the future use. How much should be used for a shipyard? How much should be used for seafood operations? We see an uptick in the seafood operations. Perhaps we could provide more room for that operation to occur, less room for a boatyard. We don't know yet. We're working closely with the Working Waterfront Coalition. We're working with the stakeholders and the tenants. But we're so early in the process that we need, 60 to 90 days to come back and engage the commission in a more thorough, more thoughtful process as to what to do with that property.
All right, Commissioner, we can certainly look at Building 1 for an early action. I can tell you, though, by the time we get a permit for demolition and we bid this thing, that we're going to be long past this fish season. But it can certainly be done by the next fish season. But I think Shirley's correct. We'll come to you with a recommendation for the whole site prior to that.
Well, and the reason I'm bringing it up right now is because this conversation, for me at least, has, some people in this room know this, has really brought up this idea of this property being far more valuable than I might have imagined for buying seafood and getting seafood off the ocean and into the marketplace. We spent a lot of time discussing what to do with the industrial park up there, and we're looking at $20+ million to do everything. We certainly don't have that money, so I think that a lot of our conversations have been about, okay, that's a big bite, and how do we even recover? Or first, how do we find the money, and how can we possibly recover that much money? But if there's some things that we can do, for example, let's look at Building 1. That will ease up some of our congestion problems, and we could do that right away. Is it, right away being, this year or something like that, right? And then maybe accelerating the reconstruction of the Sawtooth, so long as it's not doubling up on the cost of reconstruction of those bulkheads over there. So I would definitely like to use this as an opportunity to have a conversation about some of those things that we know for certain that we can do without doubling up on the costs, and then maybe buy us some more time so these businesses have a little more of a little more, what's the word, not a safety net, but they just have a little more space to operate without the constraints that we all have right now, or everybody has right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic idea, and maybe to take this massive project in little pieces, maybe $1 or $2 million pieces over time. But what we need to do is engage the Working Waterfront Coalition, our tenants, come up with some prioritized tasks that we can bring to the commission that you're comfortable with.
Okay. And then yeah, go ahead. So one other question. So there's this was something I was thinking about. So Drayton Harbor Fisheries gets exclusive access to the North Pier. We heard from Paul earlier that it would be nice if that was more of a public space or non-exclusive. So if Drayton Harbor Fish didn't have exclusive use of that, there's a couple of things that draw my attention. One is Starfish, Boundary, and Sound all have access to water, so they can pump fresh, water out of the harbor over their seafood if they need it. The only access that Drayton Harbor has to that water is if they're on the pier because they don't have a building. If the South Pier goes to Boundary Fish, the North Pier becomes a non-exclusive, then Drayton Harbor Fish would have to move into a building. There's going to be a problem getting them fresh water. So I definitely want to make sure that if any conversations like that happen, that we address the issue of ensuring they have good, clean water and access into a space that isn't on the North Pier.
That's a really good point, and I need to vet that through with Mr. Fox.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it.
Yes. Commissioner Jorgensen, did you have any?
I think you're meaning seawater.
Yes, seawater.
Yeah.
Not drinking water. Crabs probably don't like fresh water.
One remark would be, I think for the tenants involved, that it's really important that we do some short-term, 2-month or whatever it's going to be, lease so that you can get to work and get it ready, which is coming soon, and not be pressured or feeling awkward about negotiations going on for the next couple months. I would like to see that a period that's clear and you know at least what's happening for a short time. Another remark is Blaine Seafood, Paul, saw his operation and, well, he's got a lot of money invested in what he's done up to this point. And I know...
You mean Sound Pacific Seafood? You said Blaine?
Blaine Seafood.
Sound.
I'm sorry, okay.
Sound Pacific.
I've been calling it Blaine Seafood. Paul didn't throw anything at me. Anyway, I think that looking at that operation, I can understand why he's moving in his chair a little bit when he finds out he doesn't have one of the piers and would be using the Mid-Bay Pier and the Sawtooth. But I think that's happened in the past, right? And
yeah, we'll be able to work it out. I mean, one bit of clarification, it's not the
Can you, do we have a mic, or can you go to?
I can step up there, sure.
Come on up
there.
here.
Shirley, we have a handheld mic up there as well.
The folks on the film don't hear you when you're down there. Thank you.
Just one bit of clarification. We discussed not getting the Mid-Bay Pier, but one of they're basically floating dock sections. Mike, or Commissioner McCauley, I saw you had your tablet. If you had a satellite image, maybe there's what they refer to as Monkey Island. It's a net float. It's one of the docks that's tied up next to that. If we can move it over we have two, what are referred to as dolphins off the end of our existing pier. If we could have that instead of that Mid-Bay one that's right on the road, we're afraid we tie up traffic, and I believe it's condemned currently. But if we could have one of the floating docks, we can just tie to the other one. It would give us room during the salmon season to stage vessels in between unloading operations.
Hey, Paul, I'm not a good swimmer, so I've never been to Monkey Island. It doesn't look that great when you see it from the road, though. It's satisfactory for your needs?
Well, there's 6 different docks that used to tie up in front of basically.
Review over here.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, if you have another one. So next to Monkey Island, I believe there's 5 or 6 different floating piers that have been disassembled that were in prior years they were used to the west of Starfish.
Rob, you don't have to do this. I'm having fun just being the only one that can see what he's talking about.
If we could get use of one of those, just one of those piers, I would believe, just looking at them from a distance, I'd say they're about 60 feet long, which would accommodate limit seiner, which is 58 feet. And we could secure that to our 2 dolphins, which their intended purpose is to. Yeah. Oh, you're going to make me do that?
Good picture I'll draw right now.
Okay, the piers are tied adjacent to Monkey Island, and we'd be able to transport one of those. You can't see them in the satellite image, but we have 2 dolphins that are positioned there, and we could tie it alongside, and that would give staging room for a larger vessel during unloading, which what Shirley had talked about before was the mid-bay dock there. I believe that's condemned, and I'd hate to block anybody off, because as much as we can advise fishermen not to tie up, and they tend to.
You just step through the planks, that's all.
So that's the clarification on the dock part.
Shirley, can you address that? Because
Yes, I can address that. I just got the signal from Mr. Stahl, who's our director of marinas, that says, yeah, we can do that. So let's amend our motion again.
the second one.
We're not there yet.
The second
The
one.
amended one.
Yeah, to add the float.
I'm going to need help with the wording on this particular
We can finish this one if you want.
Yeah.
We can,
Well, yeah, well,
Is it an addition to, or are we truly
be
amending?
the second motion anyway.
that'll be, the second one will be amended, so let's
just read the first one.
we'll just do the first one here when we vote. Anything else, Shirley, on that?
No, I think that about covers it. Did we get approval on the first motion?
We haven't yet.
Yes,
Okay.
how about if I read the initial first?
Second, I want to make sure there's
Very
no
first
more
one.
comments.
Okay.
Mike, you said you had a whole list of them.
Yeah, I think I've got everything I wanted to address, or questions asked, but I do want to make sure that especially Mr. Fox, that you're quite clear on where I'm at, and I think Paul as well. I really want to make sure that all of the fish buyers or seafood buyers in Blaine are successful and that we don't get in your way. So in the context of these month-to-month conversations, I think that's more, it's not a way for the port to just run away from what I think is a good idea, which is making sure that you folks are getting the facilities that you need. So please don't think of it as that. It's more of I think it's almost like a sort of just a housekeeping kind of thing, because we have to sometimes, if we have a lease that's 2 years long, that's a whole lot more difficult for us to negotiate a change, like if we have to fix the North Pier, right? So please don't think that the month-to-month thing is just because we want to be able to kick you out forever. That's not the case at all. I don't think I haven't heard a single person say that would be the reason for that.
In fact, that's the last thing we want to do.
Yeah, and I really, when this conversation came up, and I know Paul and I, we had a very long conversation, I for some reason I had not felt that that this seafood buying location was that big a deal. I thought it was just a good spot and it was successful, but it seems like we might be able to build on what's happened in the past and maybe make this an even more solid location for seafood buyers in the future. So I'm hoping that that's the direction we can go. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McCauley. Commissioner Jorgensen, anything else?
No.
My only input on this is, first of all, Sound Pacific Seafoods has put up a lot of money into their new building, and as I understand, Mr. Fox, you at one time had that building or access to that building. I'm more concerned about the economic development of the whole area, along with the marine trades that can take place in that area. And when we start giving exclusives to individuals, there should be some docks that all of our tenants can use as need be, because I want the next person to come in there to also be able to have a dock, whoever that may be. So in our future plans, I hope we look at anything we can do to have docks that can be used in a non-exclusive manner if possible, because I think that'll help the marine trades and the whole economic development of that area. The other thing I want to add is at our last budget retreat, we talked a lot about Blaine, and all three commissioners are on board on wanting to do anything we can in Blaine, and I think that's great. We want to do it. There's a big cleanup job, so it's not going to happen overnight, but you have to start somewhere, and this is a good start. So any other comments? And I think I'm going to do it a little different here. If there's any one of you, after what you've heard, want to make a last comment, I'll even let you have the opportunity to do that. That's good. It means you got your say, and I appreciate that.
Or you've given up. I don't know.
Hearing no other comments from anyone, all those in favor? Oh, wait, you need to read it. You read it once, excuse me.
We're good. Yeah, we're good.
We don't need it 3 times. All those in favor?
Yeah.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Passes 3-0.
Now I'm going to ask Diane to read the second motion, which we've revised slightly.
A motion authorizing the executive director or his designee to enter into month-to-month rental agreements with Boundary Fish for the South Pier and Sound Pacific Seafoods for the Dolphins near Sound Pacific Seafood, both effective August 1, 2015.
I don't mean to split hairs here, but you already have access to the Dolphins. It's the docks, isn't it?
Docks, the Dolphins are ours currently. It's just the dock inside of them.
So that should read docks, should it not? Floats or docks or something?
I think we're clear on the intent, and then we'll work through the lease language. We know exactly where you want to put that, and we'll get it.
We'll work with
written up.
Paul and.
Does that work, Counselor?
I think that it works.
We own the dock and the Dolphins.
And it'll be reflected, the intent will be reflected in the month-to-month lease.
Okay, thank you. Having read that, are there any comments, Commissioner McCauley? Commissioner Jorgensen? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Commissioners, thank you so much for your support of these tenants. We appreciate it.
Passes 3-0. Okay, our next action item is still in real estate. Diane, if you could please read it.
A motion to approve an indemnification agreement between the Port of Bellingham and Chicago Title Insurance Company relating to financing from Columbia Bank to Bellingham High LLC as it relates to covenants, conditions, and restrictions attached to a portion of the BHI ground lease.
Thank you, Diane. That was a
Let's
mouthful.
just take a minute till people leave so we can all hear you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steve.
Diane, could we ask you to read it again when they're...
Finish fighting, Amber. All right. A motion to approve an indemnification agreement between the Port of Bellingham and Chicago Title Insurance Company related to financing from Columbia Bank to Bellingham HI or Bellingham High LLC as it relates to covenants, conditions, and restrictions attached to a portion of the BHI ground lease.
Thank you, Diane. That is a mouthful for sure. So, good afternoon, Commissioners. Brief background on this transaction. I know you're pretty intimately aware of what's happening out there at the airport. The lease was approved. The underlying lease was approved with the Commission in 2013. There has been several modifications over the last 24 months, increasing the size, utility services, start and completion dates were modified, and then most recently in April, you approved of a modification to collaterally assign the lease to the lender. And then as the lender moved forward in the process, they, of course, pulled a title report with Chicago Title. And that title report showed some clouds. There was some subsurface mineral rights and some use restrictions, namely residential and agricultural limitations to the property, which is pretty bizarre given the fact that that property was deeded from the federal government to the county, then ultimately to the port. So, of course, the lender needs assurance from the title insurance company that they can protect their interests, their security or collateral interest as a condition of the loan. So Frank's crew did a tremendous job where Chicago initially declined to issue the necessary endorsements to make this work. Frank's and his crew persuaded Chicago Title to change that, subject to the port approving of a indemnification agreement with Chicago. Should there be the very remote possibility that anybody would make a claim against those covenants being violated. This is a business decision primarily for the port this afternoon, the commission. Considering the change of ownership and the low profile risk of this transaction, staff is recommending approval.
Commissioners, I might add that this is, I would classify these as theoretical clouds on title. There were two, in the general area of the airport, there are two area-wide theoretical clouds on title. One dates from 1943. A company called the McKay Land Company reserved coal deposits more than 200 feet underground, as long as it didn't interfere with the surface activities in the district. And it extends through Birchwood and includes the airport. The title company removed that. Also in 1943, the McKay Land Company recorded a restrictive covenant that included things that are no longer legally allowed: race, color, religion, sex, those kind of things, but also restrictions on who could own property. And it also said it had to be used for agricultural or single-family residences. And so then in 1947, the federal government got a hold of the property in the War Asset Administration, and then they transferred it, and it ended up from the county to the port. And so the lender pulls a title policy, and there's this, the lender says, well, what would happen if somebody came to court and the judge said, I'm sorry, the airport can only be used for residential or agricultural purposes? We might lose our hotel. And so you can see why I say it's pretty theoretical that that would ever happen. The covenants have never been enforced, so they can't be enforced now. That's the law in Washington. If you have covenants, you have to enforce them, or they can't be enforced. In any event, we went around, and Chicago Title was very good to the port. I must commend them. They went to their underwriters in New York, I think, and finally said, listen, if the port would provide an indemnification to the title company, they'll remove it from title, which they did. So your theoretical risk is that somebody says you have to tear the airport down and use it for residential or agricultural, and at that point Chicago Title has to pay off on the title policy to Columbia Bank. I would say that that is a risk that only lawyers could think of and only lawyers could theoretically appreciate. But in any event, this document closes that transaction, allows your tenant to close his financing with Columbia Bank.
We're waiving Chicago Title's responsibility and putting it on us, are we not?
That's correct.
We are.
So we're the ones that have to tear our own airport down.
Well, picture somebody from Birchwood suing the port and saying that you can't have an airport there. I don't want to give anybody ideas, but
Just say you're giving people ideas. Unfortunately, I can't picture that.
My friends with the Reduced Jet Noise group might take you up on that.
You notice he says, I don't want to give any ideas, and he looks at YouTube as he's saying that. He's a lawyer that bills by the hour.
Like I say, this is to put it in perspective. In my opinion, this is also akin to how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. You know, that kind of risk. So, in any event, we're dealing with underwriters from New York who don't appreciate that. Our law in Washington, Chicago Title said, look, we'll remove it from title. And there's a lot of steps before Chicago Title would have to do anything. So, pretty comfortable with this one.
Once again, when we vote yes, they don't have to do anything. It's on us.
No, what would happen is somebody sues, they're successful, we don't condemn it. A judge says, I'm going to enforce the 1943 covenant that's never been enforced before. It goes to our Supreme Court. Whatever happens, we still don't condemn it, and somebody makes a claim against their title policy. So all of that would have to happen first.
Okay. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Anything further? Any comments, Mr.?
No, not on this, although I would love to just go have cocktails and laugh about situations like this, because the backstory is pretty amazing, but no, thank you.
There's a local former developer in town that bought these coal rights, and they also bought theoretically bought these covenant rights, although the covenant rights maybe are owned by everybody who has property. And he will sell them for, and we don't know the exact number, but we believe it to be around $8,000 to $10,000. And when people buy property, like the recent Costco purchase was covered, Costco actually bought these rights out. But given that you're a government with the power of condemnation, and given this is a surface lease, and given this is an FAA-funded airport, we didn't think there was any need to spend $8,000 to $10,000 to buy them out.
Sounds like you're trying to create some revenue to me.
That began in 1940, is that what you said?
1943.
1943.
Commissioner Jorgensen, did you have any comments?
No, sir.
Hearing, let's see, did you read you read the motion, didn't you? Okay. Hearing no comments, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Steve. Passes 3-0. Our next item is on aviation. Diane, if you could please read the action item.
Emily will explain how this has changed slightly from the one in your packet, and I'll read the motion. Authorize the Executive Director to execute a contract extension with Air Transport IT Services, Incorporated, or Air IT, of Orlando, Florida, for software warranty updates and on-call support, not to exceed the amount of $26,487.03. The original warranty updates and support service period ended on May 28, 2015. This pricing reflects a prorated period from May 29, 2015 through December 31, 2015.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Emily Tuma, the Airport Ops Supervisor. I'm here today on behalf of the airport to discuss this contractual proposal with Air IT, as well as ask for your approval for it. So as Diane mentioned, before I dive into the details, I want to recognize that we have changed our memo and the pricing sheet that was originally submitted to you. You'll have in front of you the changed documents. The only changes that you will see are for the price point of the total contract. And if you look at the price sheet that Air IT submitted, the second line item is for our on-call, the 24-hour help desk for year 2. That is the only price point that has been changed. And that is a majority Mark Lutweiler, the airport manager and acting director of aviation. He's been working very hard with Air IT to get that service reduced, and you will see quite a significant reduction in that price. And those are the changes that are reflected in the new memo and the price sheet that you have in front of you. So a little bit of background on why we have this contract in the first place. So with our transition with the terminal expansion, we did transition into a common use system for our airlines and the airport to utilize. So just a little bit of brief history, that common use means that we don't have exclusive agreements with the airlines to utilize certain ticket counters and boarding gate space. That again, it's common use. So any airline can log into any of the ticket counters as well as the boarding gates, and they will log into their host reservation system as if they owned that computer. And we do refer to all of it as the passenger processing system. However, with this extension for the contract with the support and warranty, that also includes all of the displays in the terminal, so our flight information displays, so that's all of the TVs that have our arrivals, departures, lets our passengers know if their flight's on time or if it's delayed, as well as all of our advertisement that is displayed on the TVs. So that's also included, which we refer to as just the passenger processing system. So in the proposed extension, that will include the period up to December 31st of this year. That includes the support and warranty. So if you look at the price sheet that Air IT has submitted, I'll just briefly go through each of those and give a brief overview of what's all included. So that first item, the BLI software warranty, that includes all of the updates that Air IT, they're an innovative company that they're consistently constantly coming up with new ideas and also just software patches to make sure that we're running on the highest efficiency. So that is included, as well as a license to use their software. And also, there's a lot of back-end work that happens. The airlines contact Air IT directly for any updates that they have to their system, since we are intertwined with them. That's background work that also is just happening on a daily basis to make sure that they can use our system in Bellingham. The 24-hour help desk, that's line item 2. So we do not have any Air IT staff on duty at the Port of Bellingham. So that 24-hour call center we rely heavily on. We do have our airport ops staff does do our first line of troubleshooting. However, anything that would go above and beyond their area of expertise, we call that 24-hour help desk line. Anything as simple as a printer not working to, if it would ever happen, fingers crossed it doesn't, of the system going down. So we heavily rely on their support with that 24-hour help desk line. And the last 3 items, the VMware, so that is the company's name. And all 3 of those items, it is the software that is associated with the host system with the airlines. It's all virtual. So that's the software, the operating system, and then also the space that we utilize in the virtual world to host all of that information. And again, Air IT, they've been a great partner with us since we have made that transition over to the common use system. And we've been working very closely with them with this contract renewal. So if you have any questions at this time, I'm more than happy to answer them.
I think you answered the only question I've got, which is the adjustment. The only adjustment we're seeing here is in the help desk, the price that we're paying for the help desk.
That is correct.
This $26,000 that we're going to spend for this 2-year warranty it doesn't warrant that it's not going to go down. It's if it goes down, they repair it?
That is one part of it, as well as it's just ongoing support as well.
So if our system goes down, there's no compensation or anything involved on their part. It's just a matter of repairing it, is it not?
Correct. We utilize that.
It just doesn't cost us to repair it.
I guess I'm not fully understanding.
No, it wouldn't cost us anything to repair it. There would be a service call. They'd walk our IT specialist through the processes and procedures and all that required to bring the system back up. I do want to point out, though, this is not a 2-year contract. This is a contract from now until the end of this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's an interim, and then we'll negotiate a 2-year contract from that.
Warranty and support for year 2 from that.
Correct.
And it's actually...
Correct. So it's a 7-month contract, I believe. It's June 1st through the end of the year.
So on an annual basis, we're paying somewhere in the neighborhood of $50,000.
Correct.
To keep this running. Okay.
That's right.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
It'd be nice if we just pour oil on it and keep it running, but
Well, what's nice is they get to do it from Florida.
I know.
Yeah.
We should make them live here.
Have any questions, Commissioner? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Our next action item is under facilities. Diane, if you could please read the action item.
Authorize the Executive Director to execute Amendment Number 2 to the Professional Services Agreement with Moffitt and Nickel to perform additional condition survey assessment services for the Bellingham Shipping Terminal and former GP or Georgia Pacific Pier Condition Survey and the Bellingham Shipping Terminal Pier Repair Project in the amount of $12,950 for a total authorized contract amount of $174,650.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Norman Gilbert, Project Engineer. The scope of work in front of you today may sound very familiar. It was actually scope that was awarded to another consultant back in January. We had initially gone forward with this under the declaration of emergency post the December 9th event. Through discussions with the tenant out there and timing of vessel moves, the work has not been able to be completed. That original agreement paired a consultant, an engineering consultant, with a contractor. Port staff has since canceled that contract and is in the process of closing out that contractor's the public works contract with that contractor. So to complete that work, Moffitt and Nichols was selected under the RFP process for the condition assessment of the shipping terminal, which also included another portion of this post-event analysis and inspection. So we're looking to move that into one consultant contract, which would generate one report at the end of the day. And then we could move forward with those repairs. Are there any questions?
Norm, you don't seem so excited today. There you go.
It's a little out of the ordinary for our process.
Why did we have to cancel? What happened with the other contractor?
Well, the original contract that we approved, like I said, paired a consultant with a contractor under the declaration of or emergency declaration to close out that contractor's contract with us and release their retainage. They've been leaving that contract open, waiting for this work to happen.
So we pay the original contractor to do this work?
We have not paid anything for this scope of work. It's just been on hold, waiting for the vessel to be moved to perform the work.
The Horizon vessel?
Correct.
And it's gone now?
No, it's scheduled to be moved during the Whatcom Waterway project later in the year, and so we would conduct this work as that time approaches.
In this survey, this is just, this $13,000 is just for this survey. The project itself is 174, or all the surveying is 174?
All of the survey is 174. So their original contract included an overall condition survey of the shipping terminal.
And that has been done? That's been completed?
Correct.
Okay.
As well as a condition survey of the Georgia Pacific Pier, a portion of that. That work has been completed, and we're waiting to get the reports back from the consultant.
So the Georgia Pacific part of this was the recent information we got, which says that I was crazy for driving around out there in a gigantic truck last year, and lucky I didn't fall in.
No comment.
Wait, it's either worse than I thought or not as bad as I thought. I don't know. Which one is it? Okay.
Any other comments?
No.
All those, hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Norman. It passes 3-0. And our next item is also facilities. If Diane could please read the action item.
Authorize the Executive Director to execute Amendment Number 40 to the Professional Services Agreement with Anchor QEA for the Whatcom Waterway Phase 1 Site Cleanup Project in the amount of $1,938,192 for a total authorized amount of $11,052,282.50.
Thank you, Diane. Good afternoon, Commissioners. John Hergesheimer, Senior Project Engineer for the Port and Project Manager for the Whatcom Waterway Project. This is the document that I promised you a couple of months ago when we did the bid award for American Construction, that this is a PSA amendment that will then cover the construction support services to be provided by the Anchor QEA, KPFF, Wilson Engineering Surveying Team to administer this $32 million cleanup project. The important thing to note on here is that this only goes through December of this year. Potentially, there'll be funds still available at the end of December, but because we've made some assumptions in here on the schedule and the productivity work that will be performed by American Construction and their subcontractor, upland subcontractor, Strider Construction. And so we've based this estimate on their provided schedule that they plan on working, American plans on working 2 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. And so we need to provide support, inspection, monitoring, and management support of that contractor for day and night operations 6 days a week. And Strider will be planning on working 1 12-hour shift 5 days a week. So this proposal has been set up to cover that much activity in this short amount of time. The major components of this PSA amendment, you'll notice task 1 is an adjustment from the PSA 38 amendment to add additional project management time, because just to manage the contract, the PSA contract with Anchor and with KPFF, their sub. And also the continued NPDES task number 5, NPDES support and permitting services. We have a discharge permit at the ASB, the Aeration Stabilization Basin, and we have to provide monitoring of the whole former GP site for stormwater controls, and we have to do annual testing of the pump system that pumps the stormwater from the GP site under the Whatcom Waterway into the ASB, where it's maintained. We have not needed to provide any discharge yet for that facility. It actually evaporates faster than it accumulates over a year's time. But we do have to go through that permitting review, analysis, and testing. So that's task number 5. Task number 6 is the very big one. That's the construction management support oversight of the contractor's work. This is the dredging and the upland work and the reduction of the demolition spoils into containers to be cut up and placed in containers to be weighed, to be measured, and to be paid out accordingly. Task number 9 is another large one. It's $486,000, and that's the environmental controls. That's as the dredger works in the waterway, we need to provide monitoring for turbidity, pH, dissolved oxygen that is affected by the dredging, and we have permit requirements that we cannot exceed, and so it's very important to make sure that as the contractor is doing his work and he's doing his own quality control for his work, but the onus of quality assurance, that is that the actual permit is being maintained, permit conditions are being maintained, is on the purview of the port as a permit holder. And so Anchor is hired then to do that, to do all those tests, monitorings, recording and reporting for the Nationwide 38 and for ecology requirements. And then the final one is construction management support for institutional controls. Because we have an engineered cap in the waterway, it's not a full removal, it's an engineered cap. We have to make sure that the institutional controls are in place so that cap does not get damaged by inadvertent activities. And so this institutional controls plan documents the location of all the work that's taken place, the location of the caps, the elevations, and then also documents the requirements for the operators that are going to be in the waterway, the tug operators, for instance, that they can only operate under certain conditions and cannot operate in, for instance, extreme low tide conditions that would potentially damage the cap. So these institutional controls needs to be documented in a plan to be presented to ecology and approved. So that's basically the basis of the $1.9 million construction management oversight PSA amendment that's before you this afternoon. Are there any specific questions on this? I covered that pretty quickly, and there's a lot of items covered in these tasks.
I have 2 questions. One, the $2 million that we're going to authorize here, is for $9 million of work we're going to do.
No,
So the management fee is $2 million for $9 million of actual work. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct. The actual contract is $32 million.
Well, but this is authorized of 11. We're only doing 11 now.
No, the 11.
This $2 million is for the whole 35.
Correct. The $11 million is the total contract amount that we have authorized or will have authorized for Anchor, and that includes the last 7 years of permitting activity. Yeah, so that might have been a little confusing the way it was written, but $11 million would be the total authorized amount for Anchor, but they are administering the $32 million contract. So it works out to about 6%.
Okay, that's the number I was looking for. Thank you. And the other one, you say they're going to work 2 12-hour shifts 6 days a week.
Correct.
Is that a polite way of saying you're going to be working 24 hours a day, but you just don't want to say it?
Well, to me, it sounds better.
Really?
Well, it's not the same guy.
You don't want the neighbors
Second
to
12
know,
hours
or?
different.
The neighbors know. It's been published. The city is on board with it. We've checked. It's it's in the waterway. It's an industrial zone, but it's not 24/7. It's 24/6. So
Right. That's much better.
So they get Sunday off. Everybody gets Sunday off.
Thank you. Did you have any questions?
I have a follow-up on Dan's question on that. So it's not a pile driver, so it should be pretty quiet at 2 a.m., except for, I'm assuming, backing trucks and machinery, which tend to beep. Am I assuming that would be probably the loudest thing that's occurring at 2 a.m.?
Probably, although the main thing that's occurring for the nighttime shift is the dredger is going to be operating out in the water. So it'll be the engine from the dredge and the tugboats, and they'll be moving barges around. I don't really anticipate there could potentially be very little of that backing activity on land during that shift. The idea is that they need to work the dredger as much as possible to get that big, expensive machine doing its job and then leaving and going to another project. So, but that's not to say that there won't be some, I'm sure, backup alarms happening.
All right, probably something we got to think.
With coal trains and oil trains, you won't even hear it.
Well, yeah, but they don't operate at night. They operate 3 o'clock in the morning. That's not night. Might be something we got to think about. We've heard complaints about noise down there before. So, okay.
Just tell them it's 2 12-hour shifts. Won't be a problem.
I'm okay with this.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you just notice I voted for the Walk and Waterway cleanup? Did you
I noticed that.
Uh-huh.
I wrote that down.
Yeah.
Wave
Thank
a
you.
flag, or what do we do here?
I would surrender.
You heard there's a party on the 12th months ago.
Well, I was going to abstain, but that sounds kind of crazy. So.
Commissioners, if it was a law firm, it'd be 2 13-hour shifts.
I'm sure it would be.
Billed by the 8-minute segment.
Okay, our next item, if you could please read it, Diane.
Authorize the executive director to execute amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with Wilson Engineering LLC in the amount of $16,142 to prepare a lot line adjustment to accommodate the sale of the real property associated with the Granary building.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities here at the Port of Bellingham. The Commission might recall a few months ago we hired Wilson Engineering to develop a general binding site plan for the Waterfront District property, or actually more specifically the Georgia Pacific property. And then within that, once a general is created, you can do your specific binding site plans. What this amendment to that PSA does is 2 things. First of all, it takes the original survey that was an ALTA survey that was done when we purchased the property, and it converts all of that survey data into a GIS format that we can utilize and put into our mapping systems, et cetera. The second thing it does, which is the most important thing for today, is it does a lot line adjustment to create a parcel around the granary building so that we can sell it to our master developer, Harcourt. This property will still be part of the general binding site plan and will be likely the first candidate for our first specific binding site plan. And the parcel will probably be reconfigured slightly to fit the roads and park in the area. But again, that's why we're here today, is just do an amendment to not only do this GIS transformation of the survey data, but to okay the amendment so we can create this lot line adjustment and create this parcel. Do the commissioners have any questions?
Yeah, it seems a little, please don't think this is criticism, I'm misunderstanding. Harcourt's already paid $200,000 for this property, correct?
They paid $200,000, yes.
But then they paid $200,000 not knowing where the lot lines were.
Well, they knew the approximate acreage around the property. The goal for Harcourt was to get a hold of the granary building and approximately 0.63 acres. So as long as that criteria was met, they're good.
They're good. Okay, because it seems like you'd want the lines first.
Right. Ideally, yeah, we would have had this drawn up, but we didn't, so we just agreed to a specific acreage amount and the building.
In the agreement with Harcourt, the master development agreement, it provides that they pay the port $200,000, which they have, and that money is non-refundable no matter what they do, unless, and it contemplated, then we would create the lot line. And so no matter what, the $200,000 is non-refundable unless we can't create a lot of record.
All right. Okay. Okay, great. Thanks.
Good question. Anything else, Commissioner Jorgensen? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Adam. Our next item, still with facilities. Diane, could you please read it?
Authorize the executive director to accept and execute Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Program Grant Number 3-53-0005-52 in the value of $4,792,516.91.
Good afternoon again, Commissioners. Adam Fulton, Director of Facilities. This is a grant from the FAA using our entitlement funds to recover monies we've already spent on the airport commercial terminal expansion project. These are monies that we have previously spent bond funds on, but have now been made eligible to the AIP funding system. And so we are essentially just recovering $4.7 million that money of our bonding capacity. So the commissioners have questions about this. I would just add that the port staff applied for this AIP grant in March, and this action is simply the acceptance of the grant.
Why stop at 4.7?
That's a good question. Only certain costs are eligible for AIP refunding. Some of the costs were not eligible for that. And then in addition to that, we've also bonded the project, and we told the bond buyers that their money would be used towards this project. So we could only find 4.7 that was covered under both those criteria.
So, Rob, just for the folks that aren't totally aware of this, and I think there was a bit of a lesson learned on this one as well for those of us here at the port, can you explain sort of what happened and how we've gotten to be able to apply for this grant?
Sure. In 2010, the port had a very booming airport that was growing about 20% a year with no end in sight. We had numerous projects we wanted to do to accommodate that growth. One of them was an air terminal expansion. Others were, adding more remain overnight or RON positions. There was other projects on top of that. We divided those into buckets and said, okay, what's AIP eligible and what's not? And so we said, okay, all this is AIP eligible. This is approximately what we think we'll get from the FAA and AIP money. Put all those projects aside. What's left, go bond it. Since that period of time has happened, the airport growth has slowed considerably, and we've decided not to pursue some of those projects that were AIP eligible. So since we no longer pursued those, we still wanted to get the AIP money, so we tried to apply that back to the terminal expansion. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. So some of the projects that we expected to do in the future and use the AIP financing tool have been set aside because we just don't need them. And in that case, we can go back and look at the part of the terminal expansion that is AIP eligible, and we can apply for a grant
there through the AIP program.
Exactly. And if those projects that we're postponing do come to fruition, there will be more AIP money in the future for those, because we're going on a longer period of time now than we originally anticipated to do those.
Groovy. Thank you.
Yep.
Super. Any questions, Commissioner?
Money's very flexible is what you're saying.
Oh, one follow-up to that. So the bonding, obviously, the lenders have an expectation of a 20-year payout. We're going to reduce that by $4.7 million, essentially next week. What happens there?
We actually can't call the bonds earlier. So what we'll do is, instead of bonding a future project, we'll use the $4.7 million for that. And we've talked about a couple of projects, one of them being the All-American Marine project that had some potential to be out for a revenue bond. But rather than going and incurring bonding costs, which are substantial for a $5 million issuance, we'll just use this money for that.
Okay, so the grant money doesn't go specifically to pay off a bond now, because we just can't.
No, that's right.
We can put the money in the bank and use it in other projects.
Correct, and we'll likely shift the debt service, which is just an internal thing, but we'll take some of that burden away from the airport since they use less of that debt, and we'll apply it more to the real estate portfolio, which is now using that debt.
Okay, and the FAA is okay with this because we've already spent the money, it's port money in this case, as opposed to FAA money. So it's not we're taking FAA money and shifting it to an unrelated port project.
The FAA is just concerned, is it grant eligible? Does it meet their criteria? And have they already paid for it? And as long as the answer is yeah, and no, then we're good shape.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hearing no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 And thank you to whoever figured that out. That's
Yes,
nice.
that's
Yeah,
great.
Great. If that was you, awesome.
No, it was a team effort, honestly, that
Look at you
Mr.
being all
Zink
nice.
started. And then our Tamara Sobjak and Rob worked it out. It was a very good team effort.
Great.
That's really great.
The original idea to trade out the AIP money for this was actually Director Zenk's.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll send him a note down there in Seattle.
Worked out well.
Okay.
Look, on his way out the door, he found $5 million. Wow. There you go. Thank you.
New business.
I don't know what that is.
So, Commissioners, I just have a request for a correction on a policy that was adopted last month on the 707 agenda item. There was an action item to authorize the executive director to execute the contracts of the Bellingham International Airport art policy, and it was discovered that the written word in the policy had one error, and we're asking that you approve the wording be corrected to reflect the action that you took.
Great. Do you need a vote?
No, really. Just a minor.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead and correct it. Appreciate it. Any other new business? Commissioner
Oh,
McCullough?
there's something that came up today. Can we give you direction to solve the problem? All right. So we've been paid by Bellwether LLC $30,000 for some art down in the Bellwether. Can we make an effort to spend the money?
We will. As you know, there's a couple moving pieces there with possibly a new tenant in the area, so I think we'd like to work with that tenant to find something that meets all our criteria.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Anything else,
I'm all
Commissioner?
done. Yep.
Commissioner Jorgensen? Hearing no other business, the meeting's adjourned.
Geez, that hurt.